you care for me, but don't worry about me, just say a prayer for me. Cause we all going one day, so just prepare for me. And I'ma live to the fullest, so don't be scared for me. Just say a prayer for me, yeah.
Pray for me. If you love me, just pray for me. Pray for me. If you love me, just pray for me.
I used to have problems getting it off. Now I'm dripping in sauce. First I'm hitting the gas, then you get the exhaust. Told the world that I'm coming, I'm working to be a boss. It's consequence for them actions. I teach my sons that it costs. All this drama in my life is fucking with my conscience. Caught the little chain, they wonder how I got this. Swear these niggas lame, why they worried about my pockets? Tore out the frame, now she wanna keep me hostage. Better than ever, it's really no room for ever. Play for keeps and never settle, no negotiate with the devil. I'm getting harder to measure, I give it all, cause I'm destined, I'm too involved and I'm ready, so through it all I'ma get it. I know you care for me, but don't worry about me, just say a prayer for me. Cause we all going one day, so just prepare for me. And I'ma live to the fullest, so don't be scared for me. Just say a prayer for me, yeah.
Pray for me. If you love me, just pray for me. Pray for me. If you love me, just pray for me. Can you pray for me?
Something wrong, somebody pray for me. Psychic said it ain't safe for me. I pulled the card with 2 snakes on it, intertwined into an 8 or something. Bottom line, it was an ace on it. Pray for me. I seen a demon with a face on it. I don't look in the mirror now. I know them voices in my head from the spirit realm. I know it's people under the stairs and in the ceiling found. I feel my niggas in the air who ain't here around me. I know you possibly sincerely care about me, but I still ain't going nowhere without the ham on me. Just say a prayer for me. I know you care for me, but don't worry about me, just say a prayer for me. Cause we all going one day, so just prepare for me. And I'ma live to the fullest, so don't be scared for me. Just say a prayer for me, yeah.
Pray for me. If you love me, just pray for me. Pray for me. If you love me, just pray for me. Can you pray for me?
First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody that's prayed, man, and sent me messages. I cannot even begin to tell you how far it took me and how it brought me back. I went through something that I thought I would never ever go through. And I know a lot of people were waiting, or wanting to hear updates, but to be honest with you, I just didn't want you to see me like that, man. I want you to see me laughing, having a good time, partying, cracking a joke, doing a movie, television show. I didn't want you to see me with tubes running out of me and trying to figure out if I was gonna make it through. And to be honest with you, my sister Deidre Dixon, my daughter Corinne Marie saved my life. So to them, to God, to a lot of great medical people, I'm able to leave you this video. I cannot tell you how great it feels to have your family kick in such a way. And y'all know they kept it airtight. They didn't let nothing out. They protected me. And that's what I hope that everyone could have in moments like these. Now, by being quiet, sometimes things, get out of hand. People saying what I got. Some people said I was blind, but as you can see, the eyes are working. The eyes are working just fine. Said I was paralyzed. I'm not paralyzed. But I did go through. I went to hell and back, and my road to recovery had some potholes as well. But I'm coming back, and I'm able to work. So I want to thank the people that let me work, and I just want to say that I love everybody, and I love all of the love that I got. And man, I know they talk about people crying on videos. You know, you could do take two, but I'm not going to do a take two. It is what it is. And if you see me out from now on and every once in a while I just burst into tears, it's because it's been tough, man. I was sick, man, but now I got my legs out, under me, so you're going to see me out. But like I said, I just want you to remember me for the jokes that I crack, the movies that I make. Some of them good, some of them ain't. I think I got a good one out. And the songs that I sing, man. And then, you know, some people were talking about I'm clone. Well, check this out. Just kidding. Not clone, man, but I'm here on earth because of some great people. I'm here on earth because of God, man. So I love all y'all. I just want to jump on here and let you know that I'm on my way back in love.
That's My 2 Cent Podcast was brought to you and sponsored by the official IBelongApparel.com. Come check out the official IBelongApparel.com for short sets, tank sets, windbreakers, Luxe tracksuits, Luxe sweatsuits, and accessories. The official IBelongApparel.com. When you stay true to yourself and your purpose, you always belong. The official IBelongApparel.com. So it's been said that there's nothing new under a sun. So the whole idea of showing that clip and that message, first public message that Jamie Foxx gave since he's been out of the hospital, we wanted to deal with cloning. And, you know, it's been so many things about, you know, this famous person or that person, you know, they clone so-and-so, they clone this one and they clone that one. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit because even as sincere as you can see when you look at and look in Jamie Foxx's eyes, you could tell, you know, he's telling the truth about what he experienced being sick and or whatever was going on with him, which was private, you know what I mean, between him and his family while he was in the hospital on the way. But he made the joke like, you know, no, I haven't been cloned, but he was dead serious. No, I mean, he made a joke, but like he was gesturing like he was about to pull his face off or like a mask. But he was like, no, I haven't been cloned. But you still have people out here, even though they heard it from the horse's mouth, will still be like it's some big thing going on where, using him as an example, he was cloned. That's not the same Jamie Foxx. But if you look at the brother's face and everything, you could tell. I mean, he's been in the hospital for over a month, and don't nobody know, respectfully so, what really happened. So if he was down like that, just common sense of, you know, daily life, people who, you know, you may know or have known or whatever, who were in the hospital for a long time or whatever, you know, it might take a little while for them to look like their, you know, usual self if they've been sick, you know, or been dealing with something real serious. I mean, it's just common sense, but there's nothing new under the sun. So the whole idea of cloning shouldn't really be a big deal. And I mean, at this point in life, when it's like you hear all of these theories about celebrities or whatever, famous people being cloned, it's like, what's the point? Okay, if the person was cloned, okay, big deal. I mean, how does you or I knowing that person has been cloned, if they've been cloned, how does that benefit just saying, you know, they were cloned? I mean, who cares for real? Like, what benefit does it mean for someone to know that somebody else was cloned? You know what I mean? Like, we gonna get more into certain topics like what's real and in terms of money, because a lot of people think that what they call money is real and it's not. And so if we connect it back to cloning, like what, they clone this person or that person so that they can keep making money? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot of just talk out here that just doesn't, you know what I mean, have any substance to me, to where it just distracts people to really looking at themselves and what's really going on in the world around them. So I wanted to share this excerpt from a book called The Lost Book of Enki, and by Zachariah Sitchin, and it deals with some of the reasons why certain beings were made or created or cloned. So you see the double helix emblem right here in the bottom left corner of the picture on the page of the book. And at the top it says the synopsis of the sixth tablet. It says, to the incredulous leadership, Enki reveals a secret. In the Abzu, there roams a wild being akin to the Anunnaki. I call the Anunnaki the master scientists. Some of them, you know what I'm saying? Because they were all different beings who came down, you know what I mean, to Earth and worked experiments, you know what I'm saying? So this particular tablet, the sixth tablet, is dealing with some of that information. Okay, it says, to the incredulous leadership, Enki reveals a secret. In the Abzu, there roams a wild being akin to the Anunnaki. By augmenting its life essence with that of the Anunnaki, augmenting means to take from and, you know, add to, etc., it can be upgraded to be an intelligent primitive worker. So they took the life essence, or DNA, you know what I'm saying, of one of the masters, of some of the master scientists, and added it to this primitive being that they came across. It says, creation belongs to the Father of all beginning. And Lil shouted, we will give our image only to an existing being. Ninma argued, and Ninma was a female or woman, badly needing gold to survive. The leaders vote yes. Enki, Ninma, and Nigish Zeta, Enki's son, began experiments. After many failures, the perfect model, Adamu, is attained. Ninma shouts triumphantly, my hands have made it. She is renamed Ninti, or the Lady of Life. For her achievement, Ninki, Enki's spouse, helps fashion Tiamat, a female earthling. The earthlings, being hybrids, mate but do not procreate. Ningishzida adds 2 essence branches to their life tree. Discovering the unapproved ongoings, Enki expels the earthlings. So that's supposed to be like the summary of what this tablet on the right is dealing with. But it deals with cloning when you really pay attention to the words and what's going on, because it said that it took from, it augmented the life essence of the master scientists, or so-called Anunnaki, and they upgraded, and then, you know, the primitive being into an intelligent primitive worker. So we'll just read on the right side, to create a primitive worker by the mark of our essence to fashion him. So it was Enki to the leaders saying, the being that we need, it already exists. So it was already beings here. See what I'm saying? Thus did Enki to them a secret of the Abzu reveal. With astonishment did the other leaders Enki's words hear. By the words they were fascinated. Creatures in the Abzu there are, Enki was saying, that walk erect on 2 legs. Their 4 legs they use as arms. With hands they are provided. Among the animals of the steppe they live. They know not dressing in garments. They eat plants with their mouths. They drink water from lake and ditch. Shaggy with hair is their whole body. Their head hair is like a lion's. With gazelles they jostle, with teeming creatures in the waters they delight. The leaders to Enki's words with amazement listen. No creature like that has ever in the Eden been seen. Enlil, disbelieving, said, eons ago on Nibiru, our predecessors like that might have been. Ninma was saying, it is a being, not a creature. Ninma was saying, to behold it must be a thrill. So that's just a little bit of what this particular book is dealing with the some of the master scientists and the making or fashioning of a being by these beings who came to Earth. You understand what I'm saying? And decided to bring about their own followers or primitive workers to do the work that they didn't want to do. They are not the Most High. I repeat, they are not the Most High. They are not the Creator, the Master Supreme Creator, Sustainer of worlds. You understand? They are master scientists, though. But the whole idea of cloning isn't new, and we're just going to deal with a little bit more of that throughout this particular episode. Now let's look at some writings that deal with creation and the creation of man, woman, and child. This is taken from some old Medu Neter texts and writings about creation, and I wish I had some actual documents, to show, but we'll just use this excerpt off of this website. It goes, it says, in the following section, the stone acclaims Ptah as supreme God and creator of all. Quote, for every great one is Ptah, who gave life to all the gods in their cause through his heart and through his tongue, end quote. And, what's really stands out about this to me is the fact that, Ptah is given credit for being the creator of all things, as well as other, GODs or so-called gods by tongue, by speaking, by speaking things into existence. It goes down further. It says Ptah's heart was the seat of intelligence, and his tongue the agent of the heart. Quote, for every work of the God came about through what the heart devised and the tongue commended, end quote. It says, in addition to creating the gods, Ptah was the originator of food, provisions, divine offerings, justice, labor, movement of the body, quote, all good things, end quote, as the text said. It says Ptah was acknowledged as the mightiest of the gods, and it was said of him that he was, quote, satisfied after he had made all things in all divine words, end quote. Kind of remind you of, in the, book that has been, called or referred to as the Bible, the collection of books, etc. When, God, spoke things in the earth, let me just, into existence, let me just go right here. We're going to come back to it. How it says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, and God saw the light that it was good and separated between the light and between the darkness. Then it says, further down, and God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the water, and let it be a separation between water and water. So basically speaking, creation into existence. So, we just got finished reading from the Lost Book of Enki, and the tablets, the cuneiform tablets, that they want to call the Sumerian tablets or whatever, of the master scientists who, have been given credit as, quote unquote, creating or making man, woman, and child, that we call humans today. But so this little excerpt here is just a paper written that was submitted to the University of Princeton or Princeton University. And I just wanted to highlight pretty much the same thing because it reiterates what we were just reading on the other page I just turned from about Ptah. It says, the extracts presented here are particularly interesting because creation is treated in an intellectual sense, whereas the creation stories like Anet or Anet on page 3 through 4 are given in purely physical terms. Here the god Ptah conceives the elements of the universe with his mind, or quote unquote heart, and brings them into being by his commanding speech, quote unquote tongue. Thus, at the beginning of Egyptian history, there was an approach to the Logos doctrine, basically, speaking things, into existence. Then the last part right here, there came into being as the heart, and there came into being as the tongue, something in the form of a tomb. So what they're talking about here is, the one called Ptah, even bringing about or creating Atum or Adam, you know what I'm saying? The mighty great one is Ptah, who transmitted life to all gods as well as to their cause through his heart, by which Heru, because that's Horus is Greek. They weren't Greek. They were ancient, so-called Egyptians, you know what I'm saying? So they didn't speak Greek, but whatever. By which Heru became Ptah, and through his tongue by which Tahuti, or they say Thoth, became Ptah. So it's even a comparison that's been going on as to if Ptah is actually, Tahuti, or Tahuti is actually Ptah, and that's what they're dealing with. But the whole point of sharing this is to show, how that first story that we were reading about in the Lost Book of Enki, dealing with the creation of everything, and more specifically, the creation or making of, man, woman, and child. You understand what I'm saying? Or so-called people. So we can go back to the biblical modern Hebrew. This is not ancient Hebrew right here. This isn't ancient. The ancient is what people want to call or see as so-called Phoenician. You understand what I'm saying? But we'll get into that at a later time. But I want to go down here to the 26th verse of so-called Genesis, and it says, quote, "And God said, let us make man in our image." First of all, let us. So that's showing you that's plural. Us is plural. You know what I'm saying? But we've been taught to think that God, capital God, is just one being. You understand what I'm saying? But it's saying, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and they shall rule over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the heaven, and over the animals and all of the earth, and over all the creeping things that creep upon the earth. End quote. 27, and God said, and God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So when we're talking about, cloning and, this and that, could these two verses, and as well as what I got finished reading on the other two websites, deal with cloning, actually the process of cloning from an ancient perspective, which they may not have used those terms, or we don't have any documents that show those actual terms being used at cloning. You understand what I'm saying? Because they didn't speak English again. But, this is describing something going on, making man in our image. You understand what I'm saying? Meaning more than one, we'll just say scientist was at work. You understand what I'm saying? Not just one being. You understand? So, then we can go from a more, what we're trying to do and show is the fact that we're going from ancient documents and how the wording and language has changed, but the concept is still the same. That's the point, is watching the concept and understanding what these words actually mean, instead of, allowing emotion to take over in a belief system of religion or whatever you want to call it, mental chains and fear to keep us trapped into thinking that, we're all the same and everything and everyone came from the same place. It's just not true. But anyway, so we can go to the King James version of the Bible. It says in verse 26, Genesis 1st chapter, verse 26, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So again, just trying to show the variation of language, as it changed from most ancient, more ancient, to, just old, in terms of when we start dealing with the, BC versus AD, concept of so-called time and years. So here's the New International Version, because I think a lot of people are into this version nowadays, same Genesis 1st chapter 26 verse, and then God said, let us make mankind. So they said they changed it from mankind. It went from man to mankind, or kind of man, if you want to deal with etymology in the science of semantics. But anyway, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish. They're saying rule, so it was dominion in the other verse. You see what I'm saying about how the words are? It's like they trying to dumb it down and make it quote unquote more simple. And it's like people need to step they read and they research and they studies up. The scripts, say that we supposed to study to show ourselves approved, but everything is about convenience nowadays. Microwaves, you understand what I'm saying? Downloads instead of actually going and buy your hard copies of whatever it is you're getting. But whatever, that's a whole nother story. So that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground, end quote. So we can see that that verse. And then we want to go to the Quran of Muhammad, peace be upon him. This version of the Quran from this website is dealing with the noble version of the Quran. The noble version of the Quran is being, translation of the Quran is, by scholars is said to be, some scholars that is moving up there with the Yusuf Ali version. I could have pulled that up, but I just chose to just use this for right now, since, it is starting to pick up with more people accepting this translation, as they did and do with the Yusuf Ali version. And I personally have the Yusuf Ali version. That's the one I read from. So anyway, same idea of dealing with the creation of man and creation of man, woman, and child in the earth. So it says here, and let me see where we at. Surah 15, verse 26, ayat 26. Indeed, we created man from sounding clay, molded from black mud. Indeed, we created man from sounding clay, molded from black mud. Dang. So here we go again. We, that's a plural term, meaning more than one. You understand what I'm saying? Let's look at another verse from the Quran. Surah 24, ayat 45. And Allah has created from water every living creature. Now this gets singular. You see what I'm saying? It says Allah has created from water every living creature. Some of them crawl on their bellies, some walk on two legs, and some walk on all four. Allah creates whatever He wills. Surely Allah is most capable of everything. Okay, so then the last one we'll look at, Surah 25, ayat 54. And He is the one who creates human beings from a humble liquid, then establishes for them bonds of kinship and marriage, for your Lord is most capable. And I really was curious about this one, because it says, and He is the one who creates human beings from a humble liquid. We can get into what is that liquid? What, and they break it down in a footnote, the mixture of sperm and egg. You understand? So procreation, you know what I mean? Coitus, you know what I mean? Is what brings about the humble liquid that has brought about the propagation of man, woman, and child on the face of the earth. But it said that Allah created them. You understand what I'm saying? And, you know, in a sense, the act of procreation, you know what I mean, bringing about children could be to a certain extent taken as cloning, because sometimes sons look like their fathers or their mothers. You understand? Daughters look like their mothers. You know what I'm saying? Their parents. You know, but there's a certain part of our chromosomes, if you will, that are unique to the parents. You know what I'm saying? Or from the parents, you understand? And the child. You know, that's why, you know, we might look like our parents, but we don't always act exactly like our parents. We have a uniqueness about us. You know what I'm saying? So with this thing about cloning and, you know, people thinking this person was cloned, and this, that, and the other, if that was really, you know, happening on the way that a lot of these, you know, tabloids and conspiracy sites be talking, you understand what I'm saying? How are these people how are those beings having their personality? Are they downloading their consciousness into a computer and then uploading it into a computer and then having that consciousness downloaded by a needle or like a device like they used in the Matrix movie where they stuck it in the back of the neck, known as the Rayash or Resh in the so-called Hebrew. And that's how they get their personality. That acts just like whoever this celebrity was that was allegedly cloned. Like I don't think people are really thinking all this stuff through. They just be talking because it sounds like something cool to talk about. And, you know, they don't even have the technology readily available as far as what they say. You understand what I'm saying? To actually download someone's consciousness to make a carbon copy for it to be dumped into another physical vessel. That's what all of this merging with technology and what is it? I forgot the name of it. It's gonna come back to me, but this whole process they're working to get done where, you know, quote unquote, man is supposed to merge with machines or computers, and they have different people that's working on it and been working on this stuff for years to try to get it to where, you know, human biological flesh is cyborgs and walking around here like basically like the Terminator and shit. And people think that this shit is cool and thinking it's interesting. And it's like, it don't make no sense. You understand? And so when we start looking at like these ancient writings and things like that, and just on the fact of simply knowing that nothing is new under the sun, we're hoping that, you know, stuff like our little, you know, presentation and study here will show and demonstrate the idea of cloning is not new. You know, it's the application and the purpose of what it's supposed to be for is what I'm questioning with these videos, because people are just out here talking and really don't know what they're talking about, and it's a bunch of conspiracy theory stuff that just don't make sense. And it's like, what benefit does it give anyone? Okay, they cloned Jamie Foxx, since we used Jamie Foxx at the beginning of the video. Okay, and if that's the case, even though he said he's not a clone, so I'm rocking with what he said, what benefit does that make for him to be cloned for you or me or the world? Especially if you want to just say, oh, well, you know, they got to keep getting money off of him or making money. That's how they keep, you know, people want to keep seeing his movies, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, when we get to the part of studying or looking into what really money is, what money really is and what it ain't, it don't make sense. Because, you know, the type of beings we talking about, if they're capable of doing this, which people are rocking with, they not thinking about money the way that we are. They live on a whole different level. They dealing with complete control of the mind. Because if you kill the mind, you control the mind, you kill and control the body. And that's just that simple on one level. So let's continue on. Just My 2 Cent podcast was also brought to you and sponsored by AmplifyReach.com, formerly known as JE Creative Web Hosting and Design. Check out Amplify Reach when you're ready to step up your business's online presence. AmplifyReach.com for affordable web design, web hosting, and marketing solutions. Amplify Reach. Amplify with a Y. Why? Because they're the best. AmplifyReach.com. Okay, so let's get into it. Here's an article from Time Magazine online. This is how Dolly the sheep was cloned. So, it's come from July 5th, 2016. When Dolly the sheep was born 20 years ago this Tuesday, few took note of the remarkable lamb. To know what was special about her, you'd have to look at her DNA. She had been cloned from a cell from an adult sheep by Scottish researchers who had worked on the project for a decade. Dolly wasn't the first animal to be cloned. Research on cloning had been going on since the mid-20th century. But she was the first example of successful cloning of a mammal from an adult cell rather than a more malleable embryo. Getting there wasn't easy, nor was it easy for lay people to understand how the Scottish team succeeded. But early the year after her birthday, when a headline-grabbing paper in the journal Nature let the world know and confirmed to insiders what had happened, Time magazine published a special report on cloning and took a crack at an explanation. Here's how the magazine explained the way it worked. To create Dolly, the Roslin Institute team concentrated on arresting the cell cycle, the series of choreographed steps all cells go through in the process of dividing. In Dolly's case, the cells the scientists wanted to clone came from the udder of a pregnant sheep, basically the womb of a pregnant sheep. To stop them from dividing, researchers starved the cells of nutrients for a week. In response, the cells fell into a slumbering state that resembled deep hibernation. At this point, the embryologist Ian Wilmot and his colleagues switched to a mainstream cloning technique known as nuclear transfer. First, they removed the nucleus of an unfertilized egg or oocyte, while leaving the surrounding cytoplasm intact. Then they placed the egg next to the nucleus of a quiescent donor cell and applied gentle pulses of electricity. These pulses prompted the egg to accept the new nucleus and all the DNA it contained as though it were its own. They also triggered a burst of biochemical activity, jump-starting the process of cell division. A week later, the embryo that had already started growing into Dolly was implanted in the uterus of a surrogate ewe. An inkling that this approach might work, says Wilmot, came from the success his teams experienced in producing live lambs from embryonic clones. Could we do it again with an adult cell? Wondered Wilmot, a reserved, self-deprecating man who likes gardening, hiking in the highlands, and drinking good single malt scotch, but who was practical enough to file for a patent before he went public. It was a high-risk project, and in the beginning, Wilmot proceeded with great secrecy, limiting his core team to 4 scientists. His caution proved to be justified. The scientists failed far more than they succeeded. Out of 277 tries, the researchers eventually produced only 29 embryos, survived longer than 6 days. Of these, all died before birth except Dolly, whose historic entry into the world was witnessed by a handful of researchers and a veterinarian. Dolly the sheep was euthanized in 2003 after developing lung disease and raising questions about whether being cloned from a 6-year-old ewe made her age more quickly. Most sheep live about twice as long as she did. Meanwhile, the fears about human cloning that were raised by her birthday did not end up panning out, at least not so far, and perhaps for a simple reason. In a Time poll, only 7% of readers said they would be interested in cloning themselves if they had the chance. So that was an article about Dolly, the goat or the lamb. You know what I mean? That they cloned more than 20 years ago. So it was 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Back in 2016. So this 2023, 7 years later. You know what I mean? So almost 30 years ago, they had already cloned a lamb, but they was telling you already that Dolly wasn't even the first animal to be cloned. So then we'll look at a timeline for when they started cloning animals, or at least they started publicly acknowledging that they have been cloning animals, because, you know, they do things in secret, but then they have to tell you certain stuff, you know what I mean? Okay, this comes from the BBC.com. Quote, 15 years ago, a sheep named Dolly, or called Dolly, arrived into our world and caused a sensation. A living, breathing, and bleeding sheep created from an adult cell. Dolly was not the first animal to be cloned, but she became the most famous. So here's the timeline, you know what I'm saying, of the animals that they clone. And it's in green, so it says right here, the first one was in 1952. And it was a tadpole. Wow. Let me see. And that was in the U.S. So it says Europe, and then other countries. They have Asia, South. I know that's not South. Yeah, South. What is that? America. It's kind of blurry on my side. In Africa. It's showing like 19 in the 70s for this one. Like roughly 1963. And it was the first clone fish. You know what I mean? They did it where out of one of these three countries, South America. Africa and Asia. Okay. But yeah, you can see here it started in 1952. And fast forward all the way up. And in 2011, right here, you can see they started cloning human stem cells, you know what I mean? In a human embryo egg. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm not going to read this whole article, but you know what I mean? Just to let you look at it and see that it's a real article. And this came from, what year was this? Thought they had a year on here. That's from 2015. This doesn't have a year on it. That's weird. Oh well. We don't know what year this is. So yeah. We'll just take it as it is though. But you know what I'm saying? So at least 1952 they start publicly talking about the fact they were cloning animals. So that's that article. Then this is an article about a group of people, you know what I'm saying, they called them a religious cult or whatever, who allegedly claimed that they had cloned a human being successfully. And it was from this podcast or this show from NPR discussed it briefly, because they were talking about, quote, human clones, where's baby Eve? Several fertility doctors around the world maintain they are planning to clone a human baby. For a time late last year, it seemed possible that human cloning had been accomplished. On December 27, 2002, Bridget Boisselier held a press conference in Florida announcing the birth of the first human clone called Eve. A year later, Boisselier, who directs a company set up by the Raelian religious sect, has offered no proof that the baby Eve exists, let alone that she is a clone. NPR's Joe Palca reports on what's happened in the field of cloning since Boisilier's 2002 announcement. So in 2002, this lady right here and her group or whatever claimed, you know what I mean, that they cloned the first human, but they didn't offer no proof. Let's see if this is the audio for that. That chart that showed, you know, the timeline for animal cloning and everything. So I came to this site on the University of Utah website. And so it says the history of cloning, lost in the midst of all the buzz about cloning, is the fact that cloning is nothing new. Its rich scientific history spans more than 100 years. The landmark examples below will take you on a journey through time where you can learn more about the history of cloning. And just for the sake of time, you know what I'm saying, we're not going to go through all of these. You can look up the website yourself. But it says right here, 1885, first ever demonstration of artificial embryo twinning. So I want y'all to pay attention to these words, these terms, because like remember the first book that I showed you about the master scientists, they said DNA, you know what I'm saying? They were talking about DNA, taking some DNA from some of the master scientists and putting it in beings that was already here. And, you know, when you get more into it, you would learn that some of them use animal DNA and mixed, all kinds of DNA to make, you know what I'm saying, even what we might call people in some cases. But, yeah, pay attention to these words: embryo, cells, DNA, and you're gonna start seeing a pattern. Because when we get to later, it's gonna be even cooler when you see, cooler in the sense that, like, wow, this has been going on for a while. They just been, playing with the words. You know what I'm saying? But it says here from 1885, sea urchin, Hans Adolf Edward Dreisch or Dreisch. The sea urchin is a relatively simple organism that is useful for studying development. Dreisch showed that by merely shaking two-celled sea urchin embryos, it was possible to separate the cells. Once separated, each cell grew into a complete sea urchin. See what I'm saying? This experiment showed that each cell in the early embryo has its own complete set of genetic instructions and can grow into a full organism. So there it is. You can get DNA from all kinds of cells. You see what I'm saying? Cells. You see? In 1902, artificial embryo twinning in a vertebrae. You see what I'm saying? They got it from a salamander in this case. 1928, the cell nucleus controls embryonic development. 1952, this is where the NPR and the BBC article was talking about when it first happened with an animal, but they're specifically calling it the first successful nuclear transfer. So it happened with a frog. Briggs and King transferred the nucleus from an early tadpole embryo into an enucleated frog egg, a frog egg from which the nucleus had been removed. So they took out the middle of the actual eggs, or actually the beans, or what will become the bean or tadpole. They took that part out. The resulting cell developed into a tadpole. The scientists created many normal tadpole clones using nuclei from early embryos. But just like Spearman's salamander experiments, cloning was less successful with donor nuclei from more advanced embryos. The few tadpole clones that did survive grew abnormally. Most importantly, this experiment showed that nuclear transfer was a viable cloning technique. It also reinforced two earlier observations. First, the nucleus directs cell growth and ultimately an organism's development. Second, embryonic cells early in development are better for cloning than cells at later stages. So the younger the better, in other words. But 1958, 75, 84, you know what I'm saying? 87, 96. So you can see the years. And Dolly, 1996, that's when they did the sheet we just read about. And then 1997, they started messing with primates, publicly anyway. And then a good movie for this is The Island of Dr. Moreau, you know what I'm saying? It deal with a lot, you know, if you're familiar with the story of Yaqub, it's really interesting as well. 1997, 98 through 99, 2001, 2007. You see what I'm saying? They dealing with more rhesus monkey, you know, for those that want to deal with the fact, you know, they want to claim that, you know, bipedal beings all come from a monkey, which, you know, the originals are not, but, you know, you can get more into that on your own. But 2013, so just wanted to give you more of a close-up on the timeline, and then show you this about the international cloning timeline. So stuff that was going on all over the world, but these in particular are dealing with mammals and you know, human DNA and cell research and stuff like that. But the one that I wanted to hit in on real quick is okay, yeah, because they're going to talk about this in this article that we're about to listen to. It says, in October 2003, both Costa Rica and Belgium introduced competing resolutions addressing cloning in the United Nations Committee. The Costa Rican resolution, backed by the United States and 43 other countries, calls for an international treaty banning all cloning, while the resolution, sponsored by Belgium and 13 other countries, seeks a treaty that would allow for the possibility of cloning for research. So it's right there in front of you, you know what I'm saying? But in December, the General Assembly moved to address the issue in its autumn 2004 session. And then in 2003, that's, you know, that same year, but in December, Clonaid, the biotechnology company founded by the leader of the Raelian group that you're going to hear about in this article that we about to get into next, religious movement announces the birth of its first successful clone, a girl Eve, but provides no proof to substantiate its claims. So, yeah, you know, we're gonna listen to that. To this, so we're about to check out that audio I was telling you about. So remember that the year is 2003. Okay, you got in October 2003 when Costa Rica and Belgium introduced this like resolutions addressing cloning, and Costa Rica, backed by the United States and 43 other countries, calls for an international treaty to ban all cloning, while, you know, a resolution by Belgium and 13 other countries wanted to allow for the possibility of cloning for research. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, in 2003, that company, you know what I mean, claimed that they cloned a human being, a human girl, you know what I'm saying, but didn't provide any evidence of it, right? So when you listen to this this article or this report, you know, just remember in 2011, you know, all of this stuff was okay for them to do human stem cell research, and they clone, as you see here, because I was able to blow up that original chart from the BBC, but human stem cell cloning and genetic material from adult skin cells grown into an early embryo inside a human egg in 2011. So this audio we about to hear is from 2003 though. Check it out.
Several fertility doctors around the world still say they are planning to clone a human baby. For a time late last year, it seemed possible that human cloning already had been accomplished. On December 27, 2002, Brigitte Boisselier held a press conference in Florida that was broadcast around the world.
I'm very, very pleased to announce that the first baby clone is born. She was born yesterday at 11:55 a.m. in the country where she was born. So this will not give you more details about the location. She's fine. We call her Eve.
A year later, Boisselier has offered no proof that the baby Eve exists, let alone that she is a clone. NPR science correspondent Joe Palca is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd almost forgotten this story.
It was hard for me to forget a year ago.
I'll refresh our memories.
The strange thing was journalists trooped down to Florida to watch this woman, Brigitte Boisselier, who's a chemist by training, tell us that she'd cloned a human baby, and some of us were sort of asking the question why. The other part of it is she's a part of a religious sect known as the Raelians, who supposedly got their religious training from aliens who told them that cloning was part of human destiny. So you might say, what was going on, that anyone was paying attention, but the answer is that after Dolly the sheep was cloned, there was sort of a cookbook on how to do cloning, and it wasn't impossible to try it if you had the will. It was just a question of whether you succeeded, and they certainly had the will because supposedly cloning is part of their makeup.
And Boisselier expected people to believe her.
Apparently she did, and she invited a journalist named Michael Gillen to sort of assemble a team of scientists who would vet the claim. And so Gillen showed up at this press conference also and said, I'm going to get some of the experts in the field. And he's a responsible journalist. I'm sure he would have. But eventually Gillen got annoyed and he wasn't getting information, so he pulled out of the project.
But this is going on.
Well, we think so. There's a researcher in Lexington, Kentucky named Panos Zavos, who is still planning to do this, and he's published reports, at least, that he's been able to create a human cloned embryo, taking a woman's egg and replacing the nucleus with an adult cell. But that's as far as he's gotten. He says he's going to continue. He says there's more to come. There's also Severino Antinori in Italy who's been talking about this, although he's been a little quieter lately. And then there's several groups, one an academic group in China and a company in Massachusetts that say we're going to clone an embryo. We're not going to put the embryo into a woman, but we're going to make this embryo in order to generate stem cells, which could in turn be used for treatments.
Is it legal?
Well, that's an interesting question. Some countries have banned cloning outright, and the United States is not one of them, actually. The U.S. has been stuck on whether to ban cloning all writ large, all cloning, or whether to just ban cloning for reproduction or cloning for research.
Spare parts.
Well, that's what they don't want people to do. But the spare parts in the sense of a kidney cell that might be useful to replace cells that had died in somebody's kidney. The illegality in this country derives from the fact that the Food and Drug Administration has said you can't do this unless we say you can, and so far they haven't said you can.
NPR's Joe Palca. Last December's Clonaid News Conference is at npr.org.
And now, more from NPR.
A U.S.-backed plan for an international ban on all forms of human cloning has been defeated, at least for the moment. Today, the UN General Assembly decided to postpone
Live from
discussion
NPR
of the
News
cloning
in
ban
Washington,
for a
I'm
year.
Janine Herbst.
The proposed ban
Former
was
President
extremely
Donald Trump
contentious and revealed deep divisions in the international community on the cloning question. NPR's Joe Palca has been following today's UN action and joins us to discuss it. Joe, why is a plan to ban cloning so contentious?
Well, in this case, it's contentious because the ban would have banned all forms of human cloning, which includes cloning to make a baby and also cloning to make stem cells, which many scientists think you could get therapies from and don't want to have banned.
And I take it that many countries are in favor of allowing the use of cloning to make stem cells.
Right. I mean, the UK and Singapore have clearly announced as policies that they're going to pursue this actively. And other countries who aren't specifically in favor of it just don't think it's something that should be banned. It should be up to the member states to make their own decision.
Now we're going to hear a bit of what happened at the General Assembly session today. This U.S.-backed proposal was actually introduced by Costa Rica, so it was referred to as the Costa Rican resolution in this excerpt of the remarks of British Deputy Ambassador Adam Thompson, who excoriated countries that are pushing for a total cloning ban.
We believe that the United Nations should proceed through consensus. It is clear that there is no consensus in respect to therapeutic cloning research. But by ignoring this fact and pressing for action to ban all cloning, supporters of the Costa Rican resolution have effectively destroyed the possibility of action on the important area on which we are all agreed, a ban on reproductive cloning.
Joe Palca, what about what we've heard Ambassador Thompson just say? Could there in fact be a ban that everybody would agree on that would just be a ban on reproductive cloning?
Well, no, that's been the problem. Every time one of those is introduced, the United States and countries that think like Costa Rica and the United States say, wait a minute, we can't have that because that would allow somebody to make an embryo for therapeutic purposes, but some unscrupulous person might try to put it into a woman. And of course, the issue from this country's point of view is all tied up in the abortion rights debate. People who are opposed to abortion rights say you shouldn't create an embryo for a purpose of destroying it, and you shouldn't create an embryo for the purpose of putting it into a woman if it's a clone embryo. So best not to start.
Why was the Bush administration pushing so hard for this at the UN?
Well, I've talked to a lot of diplomats on this point, and they think it's an end run around the U.S. Congress. Congress, the House of Representatives, has passed essentially a total ban on human cloning, but the Senate has refused to go along with this. And so now, this is a way of taking the international community and basically achieving a domestic agenda. And to maintain the sports analogy, for the Bush administration, it looks like it might be wait till next year.
Okay, NPR's Joe Palca, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just My 2 Cent podcast was also brought to you and sponsored by TasteJPSalsa.com. JP Salsa. You can come to their website, tastejpsalsa.com, and check out the black beans and corn, blueberries, peaches, honey with habanero, honey apple, and roasted garlic. Either one you can't lose, because I'm not sharing mine. TasteJPSalsa.com. If it's not JP's, you can keep it.